world country yesterday watched these images out of Cuba, really unprecedented. In 62 years of communist tyranny on the island of Cuba, we have never seen, there's never been what now is up to 40 cities in which people took to the streets organically, unorganized, grassroots, to ask for the end of that tyranny. And I think it's important for a lot of people that are new to the issue to sort of understand what that means and what it's all about. I think that the first lesson we need to take away from it is that Marxism, socialism, doesn't work. The way socialism, the way Marxism has always worked, the way it's always empowered itself, is it goes to a people and immediately divides them. It says, there is this oppressor class, and then there is this victim class, and these evil oppressors and, capitalists, in the case of socialism or traditional Marxism, they oppress the victims. And what you have to do is you have to give us the power in government to take care of these oppressors, to go after these oppressors. And if you give us that power, we will deliver you security. We will protect you from the oppressors. They ask for security in exchange for freedom. That is always the price that socialism asks for, security. And what you wind up with is a country of people that hate each other, that are angry at each other. A significant portion of the people in the country have to leave, have to flee, go to jail, because they're the oppressor class. Their lives are destroyed. Their family lives are destroyed. But the socialism can't deliver the security. And when it can't deliver the security, you don't get your freedom back. And in fact, when you start to complain about that, that is when the repression comes. Well, that's what's happened in Cuba. Socialism and Marxism has done in Cuba what it has done everywhere in the world that it's been tried. It has failed. It has failed. They gave up their freedom, or they were told, give up your freedom in exchange for a world-class healthcare system. It's not a world-class healthcare system. In fact, it's a healthcare system that does not even have the ability to deal with COVID at its very basic level. That says, give up your freedom for economic security. What economic security? People are hungry, homes are crumbling. There is no economy. There is no real economy in Cuba. Give up your freedom and you'll have an education, free education for everybody. That education, number one, you're a doctor. You can drive a taxi cab in Cuba and make more money. Or number two, you get forced to go overseas and work basically on slave wages, no pay, barely any pay at all. It's basically human trafficking, as our own Department of State found when it looked at the Cuban doctors program and how it's been abused. And so what's happened in Cuba is socialism has failed. It has to repress the people who complain about it. You don't get your freedom back. And like socialists always do, they have to find someone to blame. And who do they blame? Number one, they blame anybody in the country that doesn't agree with them. You're immediately a counter-revolutionary. You're immediately a pawn of the imperialists. And then, of course, they always blame the United States. The problem in Cuba for the regime is the people aren't falling for those lies anymore. They're not. The embargo, that's the first thing they blame. It's the embargo. The embargo's causing all this. Why aren't fishermen and farmers in Cuba allowed to fish or grow things and sell it to people? It's not the embargo that keeps them from doing that. It's the regime. Why can't Cubans own a small business? Why can't a Cuban do in Cuba what they can do in Miami, what they can do in Washington, what they do in countries all over the world? They can't do it in Cuba. They can't open a small business. That's not the embargo that keeps them from doing it. In fact, U.S. law allows us to trade and to do commerce with small businesses that are independently owned by Cubans. You know why Cubans can't own small businesses? It's not the embargo. It's not the U.S. It's the regime that doesn't allow it. People see these lies. How can they afford to build luxury, four-star, world-class hotels for tourists, but they cannot afford to deal with the crumbling homes that Cubans are living in, with roofs literally falling in over their head, with water leaking into operating rooms at hospitals? Look what they do with the money. Oh, it's because you don't allow more money to be sent. When an American or Cuban American sends money to their family members in Cuba in the past through Western Union, the regime takes 10% off the top, and then they take those dollars you sent, they force the Cubans to convert it into a worthless Cuban currency. They keep the dollars, and then guess what? If you want to buy anything, you got to buy it from a government store, and guess what the government store sells things for? Dollars. That's not the embargo, that's the Cuban regime that does that. And who is it that's putting people in jail? Gets your head cracked open, gets your door kicked down in the middle of the night. There are 80 people missing today, at least 80 people. Disappeared overnight, their family doesn't know where they are. That's not the embargo that's jailing people. That's the regime. And that's what I tell people. You can open up all you want. We can pass a bill here that says, open to Cuba, 100% open. You can do whatever you want, full free trade. You can do whatever you want. At the end of the day, the Cuban regime will control that opening. It's not just what we want to do, it's what they want to do. You want to do tourism? We tried that in 2015 when the Obama changes. And you know what they did? They said, thank you. We love the fact you're coming here as tourism. Guess what? All the tourist sites are owned by a holding company named Gaesa, controlled by the Cuban military. So everything comes through our hands. You want to send them food? That's great. Guess who gets it? Alimport, which is a government, military-owned agriculture company. You can't sell it to a small grocery store in Cuba or even a food wholesaler. It goes to the Cuban government. You want to send money? They take it. You know why? Because socialism is about control. And all of these things, tourism, food, money, medicine, it's all about control. You want humanitarian aid? Let's get Red Cross. Any of these vetted NGOs in the world should be allowed to go into Cuba. They won't allow it. A, because it's embarrassing to them. They have a world-class healthcare system. Why do they need humanitarian aid? But B, because they want to control it. Send them vaccines. But if you put it in their hands, the government, the regime, guess who gets the vaccines? The people who behave. First the regime elites, then the people who behave. If you're not behaving, if you're not going along with what they want you to do, you don't get a vaccine. They will use any opening as a tool, as a weapon against their people, because that's what socialism does.